Okay, so one of the little problems we were facing with this kind of rebuild was kind of the clutch. I've always used a 4-paddle clutch from CG over the years on several different kind of berths of this engine. I haven't really had any massive problems with them, other than we've been having problems with the input shaft vibrating, or sort of a lot of slop on the disc, which is kind of frustrating because it makes a horrible noise when the car is sort of idling. And it doesn't fill me with confidence with the kind of, the hub in the centre of the clutch. Obviously when it's vibrating it's wearing it, and it's obviously a weak part to start with, so I don't really want to strip that one out. So I thought long hard about it and what we was going to do, so I've ended up going for a heavier pressure plate and a disc from Helix for this engine. So that's kind of here, but the problem with it is the pressure plate is significantly harder than sort of a significantly higher clamping force on it than a standard one. Which then brings on with the next problem. The clutch system on the 306, as anyone who's got one will know, is a cable operated system, and the cable has plastic ends on it, and I've seen some problems before with the plastic ends snapping off with uprated clutches, basically because they can't take the extra preload. Now that's not something I particularly want happening at all. So another problem with the clutch cable, which is a problem I've had for, well, basically ever since I started moving the turbos around, is melting the clutch cable all the time on the manifold and the turbo, etc., because it has to run right past it. So I've always kind of wanted to get away from that problem, so I've decided now is probably a good time to convert to a hydraulic setup. I'm going to be running a BE4 on the new build anyway, which can be either cable or hydraulic, so it's no big deal. I can use standard parts on the gearbox side. Obviously the 306 has no provision for a clutch cylinder. So a little project we've got going on here at the moment is basically retrofitting a master cylinder for the clutch. I don't think anyone who's sort of used Peugeots, just sort of modern Peugeots, because everything's hydraulic really these days, they generally have the master cylinder sticking out of the bulkhead directly above the pedal, and the pedal just literally directly actuates the master cylinder. There's a bit of a problem with the 306 in doing that, in that there isn't really room. It actually works out to be exactly where that chassis beam is, and there's also not a lot of space there between the bulkhead and the engine in the first place, particularly not when you've got a huge sort of equal length manifold and everything else I've got going on. So I was having some issues, and I don't think it's really going to fit there. I then looked at sort of fitting it up inside the car, which isn't really ideal in the first place. There isn't really, I've sort of worked out a few ways I could do it in there, but none of them were particularly brilliant. I wasn't that happy with it. I prefer to keep it out here really. I don't really want to go down the pedal box route, just because I don't really see much need for what the car's used for in general. So you can see here, this is a stock Peugeot clutch master cylinder, so you'll see this on loads of different Peugeots, 206s, etc. So that part that you can see there basically sits on the engine bay side of the bulkhead. This part comes in and attaches to the clutch pedal, and you've got your fluid feed and your high pressure out. Never really come across very many failings, so they seem to be fairly reliable, and it would just be the obvious thing to do if we can. Again, it may not be possible. I may have to rig stuff up inside the car, so really I need to tear into it and decide exactly what I'm going to do with it. Right, okay, so the first step here really was to pull the dash back out, which is on the floor over there. I've made that quite easy to remove now. You've just basically got to undo 5 bolts and unplug 3 electrical connectors, and the whole lot will come out. So then I've just dropped the steering column out the way, and the support that then holds that in, which is the piece of steel over there, to give me some more access so we can see what we're going to do here exactly. But the aim is going to be to basically attach the cylinder to the clutch pedal somehow, ideally retaining the original pedal, because I just want to use them really. Right, I've just removed the clutch pedal there now, and also the throttle pedal. So they're both sort of out of the car. I'm going to make some modifications to the clutch pedal with some pieces of metal, basically around the hinging point, which are used in the stock car for the funny spring thing, which isn't needed, which is in my way. So I'm going to trim all that off, and we'll come back to it then. So we're going to do a bit of surgery here. This piece isn't needed, it just supports the back of the little spring thing which pivots off that. I can cut that off as well. Not going to be used. So the idea we've come up with, or the idea I've come up with, is to mount it here on the driver's side chassis leg, up against the side, and then have a pivot system with some rose joints, etc., to actually operate it. So the first sort of little thing I'm up to here is making up a mounting plate. So I need to make up a mounting plate that I can bolt to the car, which will then contain the master cylinder, the pivot, and all the linkages, etc. involved. I don't really want to weld it all directly to the car, because obviously if once it's welded there, it's kind of difficult to adjust or change if you don't like it. So the first step is going to need to make up some sort of adapter. Right, so this is basically what I've come up with. Camera's not focusing very well. So just a piece of sheet steel. I haven't drilled any holes or anything in it yet, or prepped it or grounded it all back. I thought I'd better just show you before I finish. So what's going to happen, or the plan, is I've designed this piece to come in and sit in the rear quarter like so. So that's going to sit there. I'll be drilling sort of 4 or 6 holes into the car right through that, or riv nut into the car then, or weld nuts wherever I can, what I can do there. So that'll bolt fixed to the car. This will then have the mount for the master cylinder, a pivot point, and anything else that's needed for that to work. So I'm just modifying the pedal here now. So this is a standard clutch pedal out of the 306. So obviously I needed to attach something to the top of it to enable me to go through the bulkhead with a lever arm for the clutch mechanism I've made in the previous video. So what I've done here is just basically weld on sort of a little cradle in the top of the pedal. So this part's fixed to the car. Obviously that's your pedal arm, and just basically adapted it so that I've got a rose joint able to be mounted on the top end of that. So we've just got a rose joint mounted on the top end of the pedal with a just an M8 fixing through there. It's nothing very spectacular, but no one's going to see it, so it can hide away in under the dash, and that will then push and pull the rod that comes through the bulkhead and then operates the lever on the clutch master cylinder. Okay, so I've just mounted some riv nuts in the front of the car here now. So that'll be what I use to actually secure the new clutch, hydraulic actuator, etc., or master cylinder should I say, to the actual bulkhead of the car. So I put 4 riv nuts in, which will then take an M8 bolt to hold everything in. I'm just going to get a spray can now and just touch up some of this paint around here, which has all got scratched off during the process of putting it together. And I'm going to be needing a new servo or brake booster as well. That one there has rusted out in the bottom, and I've also damaged it a little bit in the process of doing this, so it's going to have to get replaced. Right, so this is what I've ended up coming up with this. So we just welded in an extra piece of steel in the back here just to sort of support the frame for where the master cylinder goes, because obviously the force will be pushing forward and back on that. Slightly adjusted the pivot point, the angle was slightly out with the throw of the pedal, so the rose joints were constantly moving through their travel when they didn't really need to be. So we've re-angled that so that's in line now. So I'm just going to give it a wire wheel now, wire wheel, and paint it up. And a quick coat of paint later, she looks a bit like that. Right, that's basically how all the bits sort of go together. So you've got the original clutch pedal, which we've modified at the top, like you saw before. Then a shaft that goes back to this pivot arm here, with rose joints on either end of it, which obviously then reverses the direction of travel, and operates the OEM master cylinder rub from a 407, but it's the same as what's fitted to pretty much all modern Peugeots with a hydraulic clutch setup. Right, so after giving all that lot of paint up, just bolted it all back in the car. So we've got just the clutch pedal mounted up in here now, if the camera will focus in. So that's as before, but with the modified end holding that rose joint. So you'll see now that the clutch pedal is working its full travel, pulling on that linkage. So if we come around the front there now, so at the front of the car, you can see I've tried to keep everything in as tight as possible. Obviously the engine in these is a fairly tight fit anyway, especially with the 16 valve head in this back corner. On the 306 as well, because the brakes, the brake master and everything is in this corner. There's not a lot of room to sort of play with, so I've kept everything basically in against the side and right back against the bulkhead as best as I can. This lot here is certainly out of the way. The only slight concern would be whether or not this pivot, when it's in the position it's in now, is going to come forward and touch anything. I don't think it will, but time will tell on that one, but I'm pretty sure we're clear of everything there. So you can see I've got it bolted in with those riv nuts that I put in there before now. So obviously this whole unit is easily removable. If you need to, just take out those 4 bolts and obviously take off the rose joint on the linkage there, and the whole lot will come out. So the brake servo needs refitting, however I can't refit the one I've got because it's actually rotted out in the bottom, so it seems a bit silly putting that back in, so I'm going to get another one of those. So yeah, that's basically finished there now, other than actually trying it with a load on it. I'll just do a little demo, put you off my tripod a minute and do a little demonstration, but obviously we won't really be able to know if it's working until I can put an actual sort of pressure plate in on an engine and put the slave and bleed it and see what actually happens. But it's giving me the full stroke of the stock master on the full stroke of the pedal, so in theory, as long as it's all strong enough, it should work. Right, I'll just cycle the pedal, you can just see that working now. So, hopefully that should do the job.